idea for reversible shorts in my head and had to get them done. So, this is how you're going to do it. I have two fabrics I've chosen for the main shorts. One's going to be for the inside, other for the outside. I'm laying them on top of each other so I can cut out two shorts pieces out of each pattern. Now some shorts patterns have a back and a front. This one just has one for each leg, so you can alter it according to whatever shorts pattern you like to use. This is my own that I made up. So I'm just going to cut them out. And I'm cutting it just a little bit taller than last time I did this pattern because it was just a little bit short in the rise. Making sure all of my layers are smooth. Cut on a fold. Okay, so now I have got 4 shorts pieces. I've got 2 legs of green and 2 legs of my blue fabric. And the other thing I'm going to cut out is the binding I will use for the bottom of the shorts. And I'm going to use this nice stripe pattern that goes with either one. This will show on both sides of the shorts, the inside and outside. Once again, the reversible. So I am going to actually cut a 2-inch strip of this fabric. See if I can even it up without having to square it off again. And I'm going to use this just like bias tape, but it doesn't actually have to be cut on a diagonal bias because it's just going to go around the bottom of the shorts, which is a straight line. It does not have to go around the curve. So I can afford to have it be straight across rather than diagonal. It's going to be straight. And I got 2 inches. I'm gonna measure with my ruler and cut straight across. Oops. Awesome. So that's the only other piece I need. So now I have my 2 legs in green, my 2 legs in blue. I have my binding, and I'm going to use, for this piece, I'm going to use a 16-inch length of 1-inch pajama elastic. I know just from experience that that's about what fits my girl that I'm sewing for. So to get this ready, I'm first going to make 2 separate pairs of shorts out of these ones. First I'm going to make the blue. And the way to do this is you're going to sew up the insides of the legs first. Mine doesn't match up exactly because it's a self-made pattern and I just kind of know how it works. And I'm going to use very small seam allowances because that's what I designed it for. You follow the whatever seam allowance is in the pattern that you use. Okay, there's one leg. Always going to put right sides together when you're sewing the legs together. There. I don't bother to pin on this small of a seam. It doesn't quite match up though. There we go. Okay. Now I always iron my seam allowances as I go. So I am going to go ahead and do that. Iron each of these seams to the outside, to the inside. Now your seams won't show, so there's no need to finish the seams here or to zigzag or use pinking shears on them. They just will be on the inside. Ironing it still makes the final product look better. Okay, now you got 2 pants legs. And what you're gonna do to put this pair of shorts together is turn one of them inside out, or right side out, I guess. They're both inside out. And you're gonna fit this inside of the other leg. You know, line up the seams on this particular shorts pattern. There's only one seam, the inside seam. There's no outer seam. Most important thing to line up is this crotch seam right here. And mine doesn't line up perfectly because my pattern isn't perfect, so I just work around that. But what you're gonna do is you're gonna start from the crotch seam, and you're gonna, if you want to, you can pin that to make sure that it stays right where it's supposed to be. That's the most important thing to line up. I'm gonna pin that right there. And I'm gonna start from this side. I'm gonna start from the waist. This up here is the waist. And again, I'm going to use very small seam allowances because that's what I've designed my pattern for. You would use whatever seam allowance is required in your pattern. And keep those fabrics together. Here at the crotch, I have to a little bit. She doesn't like it. I'm going to line things up as I go. I only pin the spot at the crotch where it joins, but you can pin it all the way along if you'd like to. I just keep making sure my fabric lines up. And take out your pin. Make sure everything is good. Trim your threads. I'm going to make sure I caught all the fabric on all the sides, and I'm going to trim this part right here. Doesn't work on my pattern. So now it looks like you have one pant leg, but when you pull this out, pull it right side out, you end up with something that looks like an inside out pair of shorts. Okay? So we're going to actually do the same thing with the other pair. And I'm not going to bother to change my thread because none of these seams right here that we're doing will even show on the final product. So I'm just going to line it up and do exactly the same thing as I did with the blue. There's one. Just line these up. I always make sure and line up the bottom of the shorts. Will be at the hem because that will matter most. And if there's a difference in where the crotch meets, I usually just trim that out after I sew it. So here I am going to iron these seams again. There's one. Two. Do the same thing. I'm going to turn one of these, it doesn't matter which one, I'm going to turn it right side out and fit it inside of the other leg. Matching it up. Okay. To match up the crotch seam here. Make sure that matches. My line needs to be trimmed. Right there. Put a pin in that one. And I'm going to start once again from this side. Line it up all along the way. Make sure you don't end up with an uneven spot. And once again, I'm going to sew very small seam allowances, making sure that the fabrics line up pretty well all the way. Essentially, I am stitching from belly button to back, entering this seam. Trim my threads. Now I've got 2 pairs of pants, 2 pairs of shorts as I pull this one inside out. Okay, so I've got a pair of green and a pair of blue. They're both inside out. I'm actually going to take this opportunity to iron the new seam that I just did. Doesn't have to be perfect, but ironing helps to make the finished product look nice, like it wasn't homemade. Here's one, and here's the green. So now I have 2 that are ironed, and it really doesn't matter which one. I'm going to turn one of them right side out. Okay, so here I'm going to turn the green one. And I'm going to make a note of where the front and the back is. Now how I do that is I'm pinching the crotch right here. The one that is the highest is in the back. Okay, and so I'm going to match that up with this one. Oh, I have threads everywhere. Oh, that's normal. So I'm going to essentially put the green inside of the blue and line up the legs. I'm going to match up the seam at the waist. The waist. It should be the same. If I did my seam allowances properly, I will end up with 2 shorts of the same exact size. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin those exactly at the back seam. And at the front. I'm going to match those up just as well as I can. So those need to be spot on. Now if you have side seams on your pattern, you can pin those too. I tend to put a pin in the middle somewhere. Make sure my fabrics stay lined up. Want the raw edges to line up perfectly if you can. This part will be hidden though, so you can make it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to stitch around the top. I always start in the back. And this seam won't show as well, so I'm just not going to bother with changing my color. And I am just going to do a pretty short seam, or a pretty short seam allowance here, as I usually do. make sure you don't catch the other side of the shorts in what you're sewing. Make sure that you're only sewing one side. You're sewing the blue to the green, but you're not, say, catching that part. Threads off. Okay, so now you have a pair of pants that is sewn together at the waist. Now this is going to look kind of funny. I promise this works. It did last time. Looks like a pair of pants made for a person with two sets of legs. So what you're going to do is you're going to bring one of the pairs of pants all the way through. Okay. So you end up with right side out version of shorts that have two sets of legs. And you're going to put one of those inside the other. Come on. Okay. See how this is coming together? Now you just need to find where those two come together and you're going to iron it, press it. And see, you have your green on the inside and your blue on the outside. All lined up nicely. Now we're going to iron that. Press it. I want to make sure that I'm pressing exactly on the seam. So I'm going to pull. I'm going to make sure that that's right on. That's a little spot at a time. Move on to the next spot. Sorry. Move around. I'm going to line it up. Okay. Starting to look like a pair of shorts. Now we need to do the casing for the elastic on the inside. So what we're going to do, I'm going to use 1 inch elastic. You could use 3/4 inch elastic. I probably wouldn't use anything less than that unless it's a very small pair of shorts for a baby. So you want to make a casing that is just slightly bigger than your elastic. So I'm going to measure, I'm going to use this. I'm not going to sew it to the waistband. However, this seam is going to show on the outside, so I'm going to make sure that I do it with coordinating thread. So I'm going to sew on the top here on my blue. So I'm going to leave my blue thread on the top. And I'm going to put my green bobbin on the bottom so it will match the green inside. So once again, I'm using 1 inch elastic, and so I am going to make sure that I'm going just inside of that, just bigger than that. I'm going to start the seam there. Okay. And I'm not going to sew the elastic in there. I'm just holding that there to tell me where to sew. You could mark it, and I'm just going to kind of make a note of where that is on my machine and just keep it even. Come on. I'm going to go all the way around the waistband, just like this. Coming around to the end here, and I'm not going to sew all the way through. I'm going to leave an opening of about an inch so that I can put the elastic in. Oh, that's a little small. Back stitch so that seam will hold. Use my scissors to trim the thread. So I want it all the way trimmed. Okay, so that's your casing where your elastic's going to go. Now I just use my safety pin to put my elastic in. Now most casings, most of the time when you make a casing, you've just folded it over and you slip it right in. This time you're going to have to, oh, I started on the front, I meant to start on the back. Oh well, you're going to have to snake it up between the two layers. So here's my blue and my green, and I'm going to put it between the two layers. Snake it up here and put my safety pin in the casing. And I'm going to use that by pushing my safety pin along. I can encourage the elastic to go into the casing. It takes a little to get started. Come on. All the way through. Come on. The elastic doesn't want to go. I want to keep it straight. I don't want any overlap. I don't want the top to peek over, but I can fix that when I'm done as well. Just kind of scratchy elastic so it sticks. It's getting nice and bunched up. Some people use a pin on the other end too, and that makes it easy to pull. No, that's really not working. I'm going to go up between the fabrics again so I can pull this through. And I'm going to find the hole again, the same hole I went into, and that's where my pin's going to come out. Okay, the rest of my elastic is just stuck up under here, so I'm going to pull it through. It's a little small for baby girl. Just come on. My pin is slipping a little bit back, but I'm just trying to get the end of the elastic to come through. So it's okay. I'm gonna push it that way, push all the fabric that way. Come on. Okay. This elastic just wants to grab this fabric. Maybe that I made the casing just a little bit too small. But it'll work. I'm going to go up through that leg again between the two layers and pull my pin out. Come on. I know you're in there. And I'm making sure that my elastic is not twisted at any point. That the same sides are facing that need to be. I'm going to bring it out like this. Okay. So this is this. I've still got a lot of elastic to pull through. This is the tricky part with the adjustableness, is because you cannot, it's a little bit harder to get to the casing than if you were doing a traditional one-sided pair of shorts. But this side and this side meet. I'm going to stitch them up. Okay? Okay, I'm going to put a pin through it. Okay, and I've only overlapped it by about 1/2 inch. I think that's plenty, but you can do more. And I'm just going to stitch them together with a square. Stitch together a part of the elastic you don't need to sew together. Okay, there's your square. Trim the threads. Oh, messy stuff. How did I get it so messy? Okay. And that's actually just going to go right inside. I'm going to pull it so that that elastic that's right here will just disappear into this casing. Come on. Might help it a little bit. That's what's stuck. Just keep on pulling, keep on adjusting until it disappears. You look at what's gathered the most and pull it towards what's gathered the least until you get that elastic to disappear. Come on. I'm going to help it a little bit. I didn't leave very much space in between the beginning and ending stitches, so it doesn't want to disappear. You should leave about 1 inch, at least 1 inch. There we go. Okay, it's all in the seam now. We just have to adjust it around until it's about even, but you can adjust that at any time. I'm not going to sew that in place. Okay. Just make sure it's not twisted, make sure it's even, and that the seam of the fabrics when the two fabrics come together is right at the top. You do not want that hanging over one side or the other. It will affect the shorts later. And when you're happy with that, you can go ahead and close this opening that you left. You're going to stretch as you sew a little bit. Make sure you don't catch the other side of the shorts. I'm just going to go down there. And just close that right up. Okay. Trim your seams, or trim your threads, I mean. Trim. Okay. So there you have your finished waistband. This is the front, I believe. Yep, that's the front, that's the back. Now this is the interesting part, is that you've now got unfinished ends of the legs. Now there's a couple of ways that you can do this. Some people like to press each side in 1/2 inch. I would go around and iron it like that, and then iron the green part out about the same. Bring them together and you can stitch them together like that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do it with a sort of a bias tape type finish. So first I'm going to have to make my binding here. I have this long strip and it's 2 inches wide. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to iron it in half. Okay. And then I'm going to actually iron each side. I'm going to open it up and iron each side into the middle. Now the fact that this is striped makes it really easy to make it even, but you want to almost bring it to the middle. Not quite. See how that middle line is over maybe a 1/16 of an inch from where I'm ironing to? That will give you enough ease for the two fabrics you're sandwiching in between them. There's one side. Flip it around and iron in the other side. And once again, I'm going to leave a small space in between. That will leave room for folding the fabric and for the two fabrics that you're putting in between it. That is both layers of your shorts. If you have a bias tape maker, this would be easier for this size anyway. I don't. Okay, then you're gonna iron it back together again. So you're gonna fold it in the middle, what you've just done. Have this long strip of binding, which should be enough. Yep, there'll be plenty to go around my shorts. Okay, so I'm going to trim the selvage edge because that's pretty thick over here, and I don't want to use that. I'm going to have enough bulk to deal with as it is. And I'm going to open up the end of my binding and just fold it in maybe 1/4 of an inch I could iron this down, should actually. Oops. Okay, and I'm going to iron the ends back in. This is so that you don't have raw edges that are showing at the end of your shorts. So I'm going to start on one leg of these shorts, and I am going to start at the inside seam, and I'm going to match it up just as good as I can right there, and I am going to line up the raw edges with the edge of the bias tape there, the edge that's folded in. Maybe give it a little bit of extra ease and bring the other side over. Once again, this is on the side with the two raw edges ironed in. I'm going to line that up just about with the raw edges, just enough room for me to fold over. Okay, and I'm going to pin that. Best you can. Okay, now making sure that these raw edges, because these raw edges, you want them to be even, otherwise your shorts are going to have wrinkles inside. They're going to, one side will be bigger than the other. It won't line up perfectly. So you want to make sure those raw edges are right on top of each other. And you keep lining it up just a little bit at a time and sandwiching it inside of this binding. And you pin it. I pin every couple of inches. Okay, once again, I'm going to make sure my raw edges are lined up. I cut these pieces together so I know they're pretty even. Okay, and I'm going to sandwich. Keep working all the way around. Love when my edges fray. They won't fray once they're inside of the binding. Okay, keep coming around. So you're almost done. Keep lining up the edges, making sure they're even. Okay, I'm going to get really, really close, like about an inch away from where you started. Pin it off, and you're going to measure. You'll need to come to this edge that you already created and go about ½ an inch farther, and that's where you're going to cut. And this part's a little bit tricky because it adds a little bit of bulk. But you're going to open it out carefully and fold it in ½ inch like you did on the other side. Just a little bit. And then fold your edges back in. This will rarely be perfect. Do it the best you can. Okay. And then bring that around, and you're going to sandwich one side on one side and one side on the other. You can take this pin out and match them up. And pin them together if you can. And then you're just going to take the pin off and sew them together. So, okay, now that's not going to meet perfectly because the width of the bias and the fabric underneath is going to make it so it doesn't quite meet, but you do the best you can. It's on the very inside of the leg, and then you're going to carefully shove that under. If I could get a pin to go under there, I would. Okay. And then you're going to just stitch very close to the edge of this binding. Not too close though, because you have to make sure that you catch the front and the back. So go ahead and make it, you know, a good 1/8 of an inch on the inside. Most important thing is to catch the raw edges of your shorts inside of this binding. and to make it even. My end came off, but I can fix it as I'm doing this. Just gonna bring the ends together. Make sure I've got it sandwiched around my shorts fabric. This is actually gonna meet perfectly and not overlap. Back stitch over the seam there. And trim your threads. And I'm always going to look inside and make sure I didn't, that's just frayed fabric. I'm going to look inside and make sure that I caught all the edges, that I didn't go off the edge, and I did pretty good. So that's great. So this shorts leg is finished. This one we still have to do, but doesn't that look nice? You could turn them inside out. And you have a nice green pair of shorts with some binding. Turn them right side out. And you have a pair of blue forest French shorts with some binding. So I'll go ahead and do the other. Now where did my binding go? Go ahead and do the other one. Once again, I'm gonna iron down the edge, so that we have a nice finished edge at the end of the binding. Fold my pieces back in, fold my sides, fold together. Okay. And once again, I'm going to start on the inside seam. I'm going to pin them together. And sandwich it in between the binding, one side and the other. Pin that off. Come on. It gets pretty thick, so it's a little hard to pin since it's a small binding. You could do the binding any width that you like. This ends up being 1/2 inch at the bottom. You could do anything wider. Probably wouldn't go too much narrower. The same principles apply if you wanted a 2-inch binding at the end of your shorts. You would just quadruple that and use that as you, and then when you're ironing in, you just iron it in half and iron the ends in, or the sides in. So you can alter that to be whatever you want it to be. This is 1/2 inch binding, so quadruple that is 2 inches. So that's the width of the strip that I started with. I'll keep working on this. Make sure my raw edges are together. Sandwich them right inside. Once again, I'm getting closer to the end, so I'm going to pin it one more time here. And I'm going to measure about 1/2 inch or so past where I started. Cut it off. I'm going to open it out. Fold the end in about 1/4 inch. And carefully fold each side back in. It doesn't like to stay that way because it adds extra thickness to the fabric. But when you're sewing, you're the boss to make the fabric do what you want. Okay. Where's my pin? I'm gonna actually leave this pinned this time because it worked better. I'm gonna start in here. It doesn't really matter where you start and you end. But once again, I'm gonna make sure that my seam is far enough away from the edge that I'm pretty confident I'm catching the other side of the binding on the back. Not right on the very edge. You can sew this any way you like to sew bias tape. You can sew, one side at a time if you like, if it makes you feel better. Close to the end here. My machine doesn't like to go over big bulky spots, so I have to help it a little bit and push it, pull it. Back stitch at the end. Trim my threads. That's interesting. Looks like I sewed the end of my extra binding into the seam. Didn't realize that was there. It's no big deal though. Cut it out. And there you go. Pull all your threads off and you have a pair of shorts that is the same. Finished inside and out. Outside and inside. Wear it either way. So you could use this method to line pajama pants with flannel. It's the same exact thing, it's just you're going to have legs that are a little bit longer. Or you could make it just so it's reversible so you can wear it on either side. So this is going to go with a cute little dress that I made last week. These are going to be undershorts for this little dress. I think that'll be cute.